Good morning. I first want very much to thank Colonel Gautam for the opportunity to speak at this conference, and thank him and his assistants also for making it technologically possible for me to be here. I hope that my presentation will make some small contribution to our understanding of this important text. It is unnecessary in a forum such as this to reiterate how important the Arthashastra is to our understanding of politics and the political in classical India. Yet the Arthashastra remains a text of enormous breadth and complexity that requires deep and careful study to yield valid insights into both the past and present. Provided with a text of such abiding interest, it is natural to ask of the Arthashastra many questions. But as anyone who has made close study of the text will attest, it is anything but an easy source to work with. The efforts of the learned editors and translators of the text have done much to make it accessible to modern audiences, but they would be the first to admit that much in it remains obscure. Given its complexity, any topical study of the Arthashastra is also necessarily an argument about how we should read it. Contemporary audiences tend to expect of Kautilya's masterwork coherent perspectives on various topics, but I would argue that this is usually an error. We have, first of all, to account for the text's own complex history. At root, it is a compendium of other works on statecraft, which has resulted in the aggregation of frequently heterogeneous perspectives on single issues. More importantly, perhaps, we have also to account for Kautilya's method, for he instructs through copious presentation of fine detail, preferring to deepen and expand the strategic sensibilities of his students and readers by discussing strategy in specific contexts rather than in broad platitudes. Strategic acumen does not result for Kautilya from the mechanical application of strategic postulates, but by the kind of understanding that arrives from attention to detail within multiple perspectives. He is not, in other words, bothered by the fact that this text sometimes presents contradictory and conflicting perspectives on a given topic. The discussion of foreign policy in the Arthashastra is no exception, but I believe that a focus on strategic partnerships can help us understand not only how to read the complex and difficult seventh book in which Kautilya discusses foreign policy, but properly understood dramatically enhances our understanding of how Kautilya understood the nature, strategies, and goals of proper foreign policy. Throughout the Arthashastra, Kautilya concerns himself with domestic and international politics from the perspective of a single state, the archetype for which is the relatively small regional kingdom called a Janapada. The archetypal state as Janapada is situated in an international context that finds it encircled by enemy states conceived on the same model. And surrounding this circle of enemies is a yet larger circle of allies, and beyond them, enemies, allies, and so forth, radiating in concentric circles. This is the well-known mandala theory, which can presumably account for even larger political formations as aggregates of Janapadas, either conquered by or subordinated to the home state through treaties or conditions of extreme exigency. The theoretical foundation of interstate relations, based on the mandala theory, is the Shadgunya, which posits 6 fundamental postures available to the state: Sandhi, peace pact; Vigraha, initiating hostilities; Asana, remaining stationary; Yana, marching into battle; Sangshraya, seeking refuge; and Dvaidibhava, the double stratagem, that is to say, pursuing treaty and conflict simultaneously. As Patrick Olivelle has recently argued, Sandhi and Vigraha are not peace and war, as is often supposed, but refer to declared conditions of non-aggression or open hostility between states. In this model, functionally sovereign kingdoms either coexist peacefully or exist in a state of open conflict, or in a state of ambiguity between these two stable postures, either for strategic reasons or out of indifference. Thus, the Shadgunya presents a picture of the international order as comprised primarily of individual states carrying out relations with one another that are normalized through various kinds of non-aggression pacts. It seems, however, that Kautilya in fact uses the word sandhi to refer to different kinds of treaties in the 7th book. He defines the term only as panabandha, a negotiated agreement, which covers all types of settlements or pacts. But a closer look at sandhi in the text reveals a clear distinction between what we might call non-aggression pacts and strategic partnerships. The distinction between these two has not always been appreciated. It is through non-aggression pacts specifically that the strategies of the Kauṭilya result in a more or less stable international order. Although not necessarily the case, we find that non-aggression treaties are predominantly treated in the book as instruments for the subordination of weaker states by stronger ones. Discussion of various kinds of treaties at 7, 22 through 36 all involve a substantial transfer of resources from the weaker to the stronger state in order to forestall outright conquest. Some of these treaties, such as the Potsherd Treaty, 7-3-30, appear to commit the weaker state to debilitating conditions likely to result in long-term subordination, while others, such as the Golden Treaty, 7-3-29, offer the weaker state a relatively more advantageous position. We can conclude from the data that the Sandhi discussed in the Kauṭilya is specifically a non-aggression pact, that this is the understanding of Sandhi that predominates in most of the first 4 chapters of the 7th book, and, drawing a somewhat longer bow, that such treaties structured and institutionalized relations between more and less powerful states within whatever international order may have prevailed. Kautilya concludes his exclusive focus on the Kauṭilya at 7-4-18. There he uses discussion of, quote, signing a peace pact and marching to war, end quote, a topic properly understood in the context of the Kauṭilya, to pivot to the topic of samavaya, or strategic partnerships. The connection between the two is that both involve signing a treaty before marching to war, but the key difference is that within the Kauṭilya, this is a duplicitous act where the home king signs a non-aggression pact with an adversary but goes on to attack anyway. While within the context of samavaya, strategic partnerships, the home king signs a pact with an ally stipulating their mutual engagement in joint military activity or another goal-oriented partnership. Although not typically recognized in studies of the text, this is perhaps the major thematic transition in the 7th book, which has great implications for understanding the book as a whole. From this point on, the text begins a mostly unbroken discussion of strategic partnerships that lasts for the better part of the next 10 chapters. When Kautilya discusses treaties themselves for a second time at 7-6-1 through 15, he now distinguishes between treaties with stipulations and treaties without stipulations. The former are the foundation of strategic partnerships, while the latter appear to be similar to the non-aggression treaties just discussed. Of the two, Kautilya is really only interested at this point in treaties with stipulations, and spends 4 entire chapters discussing nothing but the negotiation of stipulated treaties. Understanding this shift makes clear that after 7-4-19, Kautilya has moved into a new theoretical framework for foreign relations that, although not wholly different, in some respects nevertheless appears to supersede the comparatively one-dimensional discussion of peace pacts afforded by the Kauṭilya. Nevertheless, we can see that Kautilya provides for the normalization of relations between sovereign states through 2 kinds of treaty, simple non-aggression pacts and strategic partnerships. Of the two, strategic partnerships represented a more dynamic mode of interstate relations, whose significance to understanding the political order in the text has been underappreciated. Such partnerships allowed, as we shall see, for a far greater breadth of interaction between states of various relative strengths, in which skillful negotiation played a far greater role in navigating an environment ripe for both cooperation and competition. Strategic partnerships, it appears, were negotiated between independent sovereign states. The archetypal activity prescribed in such agreements is a joint military campaign, although other kinds of activities are also mentioned. The topic is introduced with the following passage at 7-4-19. Quote, alternatively, if he, that is to say the king, were to foresee, I am unable to march into battle alone, but it is imperative that I march into battle, then he should march into battle after forming a partnership with partners who may be equal or weaker or stronger, agreeing to fixed shares if conducted in one place, or to shares that are not fixed if conducted in more than one place. End quote. Here we have a situation in which it is necessary to march into war, but it is impossible to win alone. Hence, Kautilya prescribes the forming of a strategic partnership with consociates or confederates, samavayakaihi sambuya. The spoils of war are to be divided based on a predetermined rubric. At their most basic, such strategic partnerships are opportunities for cooperation between states through which they can meet strategic goals and, crucially, enrich themselves. In this sense, such strategic partnerships are akin to contracts in civil law. But if strategic partnerships provided opportunities for cooperation and mutual advancement, they were also themselves opportunities for political maneuvering and competition. And this is primarily Kautilya's interest in them. Strength and reliability were key considerations, and inequality among partners established the key parameters for strategic thought. Kautilya tells us, quote, "Among confederated allies, should one march into battle after forming a partnership with one ruler who is stronger, or with two equals? It is better to do so with two equals, for with a stronger ruler he operates under his control, while when he is in partnership with two equals, he operates with plenty of opportunities to outwit them. For it is easy to cause dissension between the two, and if one becomes traitorous, for the two to restrain him, and to seize the one who is in the grip of dissension. With one who is equal, or with two who are weaker? It is better to do so with two who are weaker, for they accomplish two tasks and remain under his control." End quote. That's 7.540 through 44. Much like non-aggression pacts, strategic partnerships between stronger and weaker states inevitably result in the latter ceding control to the former, to the likely detriment of the weaker states. In this, we see the capacity for strategic partnerships to structure interstate relations through competition. Compared with non-aggression pacts, where the weaker state essentially tried to buy off conquest, strategic partnerships provided far greater opportunity for states of all kinds to seek advantage by outwitting their partners. Outwitting, atisangda, means entering or executing relations that provide particular benefit to one party over against the other. The vast majority of Kautilya's advice on strategic partnerships pertains to opportunities for outwitting, whether on the part of the weaker, equal, or stronger state. As such, strategic partnerships were not only crucial mechanisms for structuring state relations, but also themselves important instruments for establishing and maintaining political dominance. They appear, moreover, to have been far more delicate tools for such ends, able to accommodate more nuanced relationships than the comparatively simple non-aggression pacts. To the extent that one could skillfully engage in such strategic partnerships, they would appear to have provided a less diplomatically risky and more nuanced alternative to unilateral non-aggression or subordination. Moreover, it is clear that Kautilya places great emphasis on strategic partnerships, probably precisely for this reason. It is clear to this point that both non-aggression pacts and strategic partnerships structured relations between states. Much of this can be implied from Kautilya's discussion about negotiating such partnerships. But we read also more directly of the existence of such partnerships as political formations themselves in several places. In advice on strategies to be used by kings about to be attacked by strategic partnerships, 7.8, 1 through 4, and 7.14. In instructions on competition or conflict between two strategic partnerships, 7.8, 10 through 34. And then advice on the formation of strategic partnerships in response to threat by stronger kings, 7.15, 1 through 6. This gives us a clear sense of the extent to which such political formations were common features in international relations, as well as in the internal strategic considerations of individual states, a likely political reality not comfortably addressed by the Shadgunya alone. Such discussions of strategic partnerships as political formations reveal something of their internal relations. Strategic partnerships can either be comprised of a single principal member or chief, pradhana, and other weaker members, hina, or they can be without a principal or chief partner, pradhana bhava. The nature of their organization, whether with or without a chief partner, influences the strategy of a king attacked by such partnerships. In the former case, the home king tries to divide the principal from the weaker members of the partnership. In the latter, the king looks for those partners who can present some kind of foothold for pursuing his strategic interests. Kautilya lists the following possibilities. This is 7.14, 10 through 11. Quote, "If there is no chief, he should secure from among the partners one of the following: one who galvanizes them, one who perseveres in his undertakings, one with loyal subjects, one who joined the confederation out of greed or fear, one who is afraid of the seeker after conquest, that is to say the home king, one who is anchored to his kingdom, an ally, or a mobile enemy. Selecting those listed earlier in the absence of those listed later, the one who galvanized them by offering himself, the one who perseveres in his undertakings with conciliatory prostrations, the one with loyal subjects by giving and receiving girls in marriage, the greedy one by offering a double share, the one afraid of them by providing support with treasure and troops, the one naturally afraid by building up his confidence and giving a surety, the one anchored to his kingdom by entering into close coalition with him, the ally by doing things cherished by and beneficial to both, or by handing over benefit he has received, and the mobile enemy who is confined by halting injurious actions and offering assistance. Alternatively, he should secure any one of them using any means by which he may become disunited, or through conciliation, gifts, dissension, and military force, as we will explain in the section on danger." End quote. Collectively, these two kinds of strategic partnerships, one with principal partner and subordinates, and one without principal partner, give us a much more nuanced picture of the kinds of political formations that likely populated international relations beyond the static notions of long-term non-aggression pacts through which subordination was often institutionalized. That such formations were a regular part of general strategic thought, particularly with respect to military activity, is evident in the 7th book as well as elsewhere in the text. Emphasis on the Shadgunya within interpretations of Kautilyan political thought has, I would argue, overshadowed the importance of strategic partnerships in Kautilya's understanding of the international political order. There is no doubt that the Shadgunya provides the basic language for discussing relations between states, but emphasizing it leaves the reader with a picture of foreign relations in which individual states vie against one another and establish relations primarily through unilateral non-aggression pacts. In fact, however, Kautilya spends far more time discussing strategic partnerships, so much that taking full account of these temporary political formations changes fundamentally how we think about political relations in the period. It would appear that states routinely engaged in such activity, and that it was a crucial part of interstate relations, allowing for strategic breadth in both the achievement of specific goals as well as competition with adversaries. Moreover, attention to the distinction between non-aggression pacts and strategic partnerships that I have attempted to outline here, both different conceptualizations of the umbrella term sandhi, reveal a major shift within the 7th book of the Arthashastra at 7.4.19. This should, I would argue, be regarded as one of the major junctures of the 7th book, with the implication that we have here the joining of two different streams of political thought in the period. Preliminary investigation comparing 7.1.1 through 7.4.18 on one hand, and 7.4.19 and following on the other, suggest important shifts in technical terminology as well as theoretical assumptions. Recognizing the difference between kinds of treaties helps shine light on the shift at 7.4.19 and potentially opens up new understandings about the composition of the 7th book. Finally, although it perhaps barely needs reiteration, Kautilya's treatment of strategic partnerships helps underscore certain foundational dispositions within Kautilyan foreign policy. The unwavering goal of foreign policy in the Arthashastra is world conquest, the quote, victory of the single king, end quote. And the subject of all foreign policy deliberations is the Vijigishu, the seeker after conquest. Kautilya has no interest in stable normalized relations with other states inside of a pacified international order that protects their sovereignty and discourages territorial conquest. It is possible that such a proposition would have seemed to him utter fantasy. What is clear is that Kautilya's concern with strategic partnerships has far less to do with cooperation than competition, and that states that weren't outwitting were at constant risk of being outwitted. Nevertheless, strategic partnerships seem to have been able to play the role of stabilizing international relations, at least insofar as they gave weaker states a regular mechanism for resisting conquest by more powerful states, and provided enhanced opportunities for advancement as well as security. It is not too much to claim that strategic partnerships are in many ways at the heart of Kautilyan foreign policy, and they may well provide a crucial link between the text and the political history of the subcontinent as derived from other sources. Thank you.